Hey traders, it's John Fortune here with this week's Weekly Forex Forecast for the 2nd of September to the 6th of September 2019. As always, we're going to start off by looking at the US dollar index and oil before running through a number of markets, looking at the key levels of support and resistance in the process. I'm also going to be highlighting some of the targets that we're going to be looking for in this coming week and also for the weeks ahead. So I hope you're having a great weekend, guys. Let's jump over to the charts and see where the money is this week. As always, we're going to start off by looking at the US dollar index. Now, we always look at this every week, not necessarily to trade the US dollar index on its own, but as a compass, as a guide to trading the dollar pairs for the week ahead and for the pairs that we're going to be looking at. Now, you can see last week we actually broke above the key area of resistance from last week and also traded into the 98.86. Now, this is an area we've highlighted in previous forecasts as being very important. Why? Because it's the start of the 2017 bear market, and this is why we're struggling the dollar index to actually break above this. Now, because we've actually failed to break above this once again, although we're seeing strength in the dollar, the risk next week is that we go back into this corrective structure that we've been looking at over the past few weeks. And so generally speaking, we will be looking for a bit of dollar strength next week, but we will not be going into next week with a bullish bias because of where we sit and because we closed the week below the start of the 2017 bear market at the 98.86. So very simply put, we will not be taking any bullish or bearish bias on the dollar index. We'll be taking a neutral bias on the dollar index next week. And what this means is that we will be trading the individual pairs on their own merit without a strong bias in the dollar one way or the other. We'll be trading the pairs as they are structured. So next market we're going to look at is crude oil. Now, crude oil has been chopping around in this range for a couple of weeks now. It has not really been going anywhere. We are still looking for declines to the downside as it is still structured to the downside, and we're looking for a continuation of this current downtrend. If we can get a pullback this week, the key area of resistance we're going to be looking at is 57.19. This would be a great place once again to start to look for those bearish formations and patterns, seeing if we can finally break out of this corrective structure in oil next week. And if we get the right kind of bearish formations and patterns in this area, because we have to have tradable patterns in order to initiate our trades, we're going to be looking at initiating shorts down towards the next key area of support to the downside and the target set at 50.42. So the first currency pair we're going to look at is euro dollar. Now, we start the week below a key area of broken support from last week at 1.10520. We are structured to the downside in the euro dollar, so we're only going to be looking for bearish setups in this market next week. If we can get a pullback, because we're coming quite close to the next key area of support on the target, so in order to get that good risk to reward, if we can get a pullback and a retest of broken support, turning resistance to the 1.10520, this is going to be a great place next week to start to look for those bearish formations and patterns. We're going to be looking down towards the next key area of support to the downside and the target set, the 1.0951, and if we can get a break through here, you can see there's quite a big gap down to the next key area of support. This is actually would be filling a historical gap down towards the 1.0775. But if we can get a breakthrough here, we're going to be looking at further declines down towards the next key area of support to the downside and target 2 at the 1.0775. So next market we're going to look at is pound dollar. Now, last week we were looking for a pullback and a retest of broken resistance, turning support at the 1.21650. You can see we did actually get this last week, and we're currently sitting at the 1.21650. We have not had any reversal patterns just yet, so we have not been looking to initiate any long positions in this yet. However, going into this week, this is now a great place to once again start to look for those bullish formations and patterns. And if we get the right kind of bullish formations and patterns in this area, we're going to be looking at initiating longs up towards the next key area of resistance to the upside and the target set at the 1.2373. And if we get a break through here, we're going to be looking up towards the next key area of resistance to the upside and target 2 at the 1.2610. So next one we're going to look at is US dollar Japanese yen. Now, last week we were looking for a pullback towards the 106.50, and you can see we did come back and test this area highlighted from last week. We started to sell off from this area, although we haven't had a full-blown reversal pattern as of yet. But very simply put, going into next week, we are going to be looking for further declines to the downside. We're going to be looking for short opportunities in the US dollar yen as long as we're below the 106.50. If we can get a retest one more time, this is going to be a great area now to start to look for those bearish formations and patterns. And we're going to be looking at initiating shorts down towards the next key area of support to the downside and the target set at the 103.76. Just to repeat again, going into next week, especially as we have a neutral bias on the US dollar index, it's even more important to make sure you wait for those tradable setups to appear and not just jump in with buy and sell orders. We have to have tradable patterns if we're going to initiate trades in these markets. So next market we're going to look at is Aussie dollar. Now we have actually been bearish on the Aussie dollar now for a number of weeks. We are looking down towards the next key area of support to the downside, 0.6604, and we have been declining, making further declines to the downside in this market. As you can see, we've been very choppy. However, we've still been making lower lows and lower highs, so we are still looking further declines to the downside. Very simply put, we sit below a key area of broken support, looking to turn resistance next week at the 0.67470. If we can get a pullback, we're going to be focused on looking for bearish opportunities in this market. And we're going to be looking at initiating shorts down towards the next key area of support to the downside and the target set, the 0.6604. So next market we're going to look at is New Zealand dollar. Now last week we were looking further declines and we did take out the target set from last week at the 0.6350. We are now looking for the second target set from last week and now the next key area of support to the downside at the 0.6238. If we can get a pullback in the New Zealand dollar and if we can get a retest of broken support turning resistance to the 0.63650, this is going to be a great place to start to look for bearish formations and patterns. And we're going to be looking at initiating shorts in this market down towards the next key area of support to the downside and target set from last week, target 2 from last week at 0.6238. And if we can get a breakthrough here, we're going to be looking down towards the next key area of support to the downside and target 2 for this week at the 0.6128. So next market we're going to look at is US dollar Swiss franc. Now we start the week above a key area of broken resistance from the past, looking to turn support at 0.98150. If we can get a pullback, and as always, if we can get a pullback and a retest of broken resistance turning support, this is going to be a great place next week to start to look for those bullish formations and patterns. And we're going to be looking at initiating longs up towards the next key area of resistance to the upside of the target set at the 1.0000. So next market we're going to look at is US dollar CAD. Now we have pretty much gone nowhere in the US dollar CAD. It's been very, very choppy. There have not been any opportunities here in the US dollar CAD. We are still structured to the upside, so overall we would only look in this market for bullish patterns. If we can get a pullback, and I would really like to see a pullback and a retest in this market because of the choppiness of this price action. If we can get a pullback and a retest of broken resistance turning support at the 1.3200, this is going to be a fantastic place next week if we can get this pullback to start to look for a bounce and to start to look for those bullish formations and patterns. And we're going to be looking at initiating longs up towards the next key area of resistance highlighted from last week at the 1.3355. And if we can get a breakthrough here, we're going to be looking up towards the next key area of resistance to the upside and target 2 at the 1.3429. You can see as well, even though we had that rally to the upside in the dollar index last week, we still did not manage to break higher in the US dollar CAD. So this is another sign next week that despite that push to the upside, the dollar is actually still neutral. It is still lacking any serious strength. And last but not least, we have gold. Now, last week we highlighted the 1504.67 as an area to look for a pullback towards. We started to pull back towards this key area highlighted from last week. So very simply put, we're only looking for bullish opportunities in order to continue this uptrend in gold. If we can get a pullback and an actual retest of broken resistance turning support at the 1504.67, this would be great as this gives us the best risk reward towards the target. We would be looking in this area now going into next week. This is a great place to look for those bullish formations and patterns. And if we get the right kind of bullish formations and patterns in this market, we're going to be looking at initiating longs up towards the next key area of resistance to the upside of the target set, the 1589.90. So that is it from me for this week, guys. As always, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please let me know by liking, sharing and subscribing. A big thank you to everyone who does that on a regular basis, and a big thank you to everyone who has subscribed to the channel so far. I want to wish you all a fantastic weekend, and I want to wish you all a very profitable week next week. The only thing left to say, guys, is take care and don't forget to trade safely.